is tilling. Turn to page 298. Tilling. Silly Tilly. Silly Tilly was no fun. Favorite children's books. All right, what is tilling? No one has any idea what tilling is?
No.
Like if you till a garden?
No.
No?
Oh wait, is tilling the process that makes like the roads?
No, but you're close. You're thinking of plowing.
Oh.
So tilling is when you dig up the soil using a tiller or some kind of like disc or harrow, or there's a number of different tools. But basically what you're doing is you're mixing up the soil on the top. You're breaking it up. Y'all remember that day that had the tractor up here and then that orange thing was on the back of it? Okay, that was a tiller. You remember how like the soil out there was all broken up when we planted our plants? Well, one of y'all wasn't here, but most of y'all remember that. So that was a tiller. It's something that basically has little metal tines and it mixes up the dirt and breaks it up. So in agriculture, a lot of people till before they plant their crops. And historically that's been done, till or plow the soil. Now a lot of people have stopped tilling and they went to no-till farming. So there are some pros and cons of this. Let's go through and talk about them. So you can kind of do like a pro-con list for tilling after you figure out how you want to describe it. I'm ready, Internet. All right, so at the bottom of page 298, Simona, read 11:15 for us.
No-till agriculture. Rows of soybeans emerge between the residues of corn crop left over from the previous season.
All right, so tilling means they don't try to disturb the soil. They just go through and plant it. So they run a planter over it, digs a little hole in the ground, puts the seed in there, covers it up, and then it goes on to the next one. So it's not, if you tilled this area, all that corn residue would be what? It would get mixed in the soil and put down in there for it to break down. Now, let's look in the paragraph here on 298, where it starts with no-till agriculture. DeMar, maybe you can start for us, make up for lost time.
No-till agriculture is designed to avoid the soil degradation.
Degradation. What is degradation? This is a term you're going to see quite often.
When it just like breaks down into.
Yeah, what does it mean to degrade something?
Put it down.
Put it down, break it down. So soil degradation means to break down the soil, make it worse. Okay? Y'all need to know that term, degradation, to degrade. Keep going.
That comes with
Conventional.
conventional agricultural techniques. Farmers using this method leave crop
Residues. That's the leftover stuff.
Yeah, I know that. Anyways, residues in the field between seasons. The impact roots hold the soil in place, reducing both wind and water erosion.
Okay, so no-till. One of the benefits is to help reduce erosion. It helps to, if you leave the plants from last year in place, it will hold the soil in place and reduce erosion by wind and water. And you can do this on some crops. And then also it's going to be really soil dependent. Like if we were to go out and plant a garden in the field out there by the tennis court, or like between the school and the tennis court, we might have a problem. Why? What would be our biggest problem in terms of planting a productive crop? If we didn't dig up that soil, till up that soil, break up that soil, if we just planted the seeds. Well, there's a bunch of weeds and grass and stuff, okay, so that would compete with it. And also the soil that's out there is very what? It's dry and hard and compacted. And when you plant seeds in soil that is dry and hard and compacted, what happens?
They are under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, they're not going to grow very well. So the soil that you see here on 298 at the bottom, this looks like soil that's very rich in organic matter. It looks like it's very loose, and looks like it's already broken up. I'm gonna be honest with you. Let me see y'all's picture, because my picture, it says rows of soybeans emerge between residues of corn crops. That's corn that's growing between the corn crops in mine. Maybe y'all's picture is different from mine. No, that's definitely corn. That's definitely corn. Okay, so yeah, they screwed this one up too. Yeah, that's corn. Normally I can't believe I didn't catch that earlier. Yeah, yours is too. Normally in the Midwest, what happens is, and most farmers in America, they'll plant soybeans one year and then they plant corn the next. Soybeans, then corn. So they're rotating crops to reduce nutrient loss, which is beneficial. So, but if you have soil, like I've got this conundrum over at my place over here. So I want to plant a really big garden. I like to garden, like to grow stuff. I think it's fun to grow stuff. It's kind of like having a baby, except not as painful. You're creating life. So the problem is I've got a lot of very hard compacted soil, just like out here between the school and the tennis court. And if I were just to go out there and start planting seeds in that, then it wouldn't be very productive. There's not many nutrients in the soil. There's not much organic matter in the soil. It's very hard and compacted. So hard and compacted soil can't get what two things? Water and air. Good. So you typically don't want sunlight under the soil, or you're not too worried about it. So air is important. Air is important for root growth. So you can't get water, you can't get air, and plants aren't going to grow very well. But if you have land like this that's been established and there's a lot of organic matter and a lot of stuff that lives in there, like earthworms and bugs and stuff, and there's a lot of root systems that have moved through there that have broken that soil up, then you can do this no-till method. But on really hard compacted soil, it would be very difficult. My hoop dream would be, I'll probably have to plow for 2 or 3 years until I get the soil improved, and then hopefully I can kind of move toward a no-till method. But right now, if I planted no-till, it just wouldn't do a lot of good for me. All right, let's continue on. But this is more what soil looks like where most of our crops are grown throughout the Midwest and the grasslands. Keep going, Amar. No-till.
The intact roots hold the soil in place, reducing both wind and water erosion, and the undisturbed soil is able to regenerate natural soil horizons. No-till agriculture also reduces emissions of carbon dioxide because the intact soil undergoes less oxidation.
All right, it also reduces what else? When you till and break up the soil and turn it over, it's exposed to what?
Air.
The sun and air. So it's going to do what? More quickly. What'd you say?
I said dry out.
Dry out. Yeah, it's going to dry out much more quickly. Whereas if you leave, like if you had corn there last year and you got all these corn stalks and stuff laying on the ground, they're going to kind of act like mulch and hold moisture in, and they're also going to break down. Now, you could till them in, and then they would break down within the soil, but the other soil that you exposed, you would lose a lot of that moisture, and more CO2 would escape in the atmosphere. In many cases, however, in order for no-till agriculture to be successful, farmers must apply herbicides to fields before and sometimes after planting so weeds do not compete with the crops. Therefore, the downside of no-till method is an increase in herbicides. So if I were to guess on this field we're looking at in your book here on 298, they're probably got Roundup Ready corn, and that Roundup Ready corn, once they plant it here, when weeds start coming up, they're going to have to do what? They're going to spray it. So basically, Roundup Ready corn we talked about yesterday, that is when it's corn that has a gene inserted, and normally Roundup kills all plants, but you can go out there and plant all the corn you want to, and then go back, and when the weeds start coming up, go spray that whole field down, hose it down, and it'll kill everything except the corn. And so we talked about the issues related to pesticide runoff. How does it reside? There's some of that left in the plant material. So those are drawbacks of that. But in terms of no-till, the main purpose is to maintain your soil, maintain moisture, reduce erosion through wind and water, like we saw in the. When did we see major what? When did we see major erosion of soil? In the 1930s.
The
Dust Bowl. Thank you, Anthony's. All right, slash and burn farming, 295. On 295, you hear a lot about slash and burn throughout Central and South America, like the Amazon, where forests are cut down, trees are logged off, the rest of it's burned basically, and to try to get some nutrients in the ground, and then it's either planted in probably corn or soybeans are used for growing cattle. The unfortunate part here is most forest land that's slash and burn, especially rainforest, the soil is not good. It's not very rich in nutrients. Most all the nutrients were in the plants. And when you slash and burn, you lose a lot of those nutrients. A lot of that blows away. And so it's not super productive land. And then you're never getting that rainforest back. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, you destroy the cure for cancer somewhere in one of those trees or a little bug in the bushes. I don't know. Maybe if you didn't have to have a Brazilian hardwood floors. Don't get me started. I'm on camera. All right, so slash and burn. This guy looks like maybe this is somewhere in Central Africa. Like I say, this also happens a lot through South America, and I'm sure throughout other parts of the world as well. Let's see. Last thing is fertilizers, page 290. What are the three main nutrients we get in fertilizers?
Nitrate, phosphorus, and
NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Good.
that one.
So there are two types of fertilizers you need to know. There are synthetic, which is the ones you buy in a bag from the store in little pellets that has those nutrients in a specified amount. And then there's organic fertilizer like compost from horse manure, cow manure, chicken manure, you get that, goat manure, composted and spread out on your garden or field or whatever you're trying to grow. The drawback of both of those is that runoff can cause those nutrients to go in streams and ponds and lakes and cause what death cycle? What is the death cycle?
Pollution.
Where algae overgrow in the pond, the algae grow, the algae die, bacteria break them down, bacteria uses up the oxygen. The animals in the water that need oxygen, they suffocate. What do we call that? Thank you, eutrophication. Rest of you come back to school, please. So eutrophication, that death cycle. So that is something to worry about with any fertilizer. The big drawback from synthetic fertilizers themselves is that it requires a lot of fossil fuel energy use to make them. So to get the nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium that goes into those little pellets, it requires lots and lots of energy, lots of fossil fuel usage, which is problematic for climate change. All right. Why do we use fertilizers? Yeah, they provide nutrients and help stuff grow. So there is a lot of people who are say no to fertilizers, but in terms of just production and growth, fertilizers do help with that. So that's something to consider. All right, any questions? We're gonna go outside and check our plants and see which ones are growing and producing. There's some peas getting pretty close. And then we'll check the chickens. And then we will get to work on our biggest little farm. And for you at home, you should be working on the web quest I have listed.